Fashion Forward, where we look into how fashion and society impact each other. I'm your host, Brittany Carl. Let's get started. Today we're going to be talking about heels, specifically the history of heels with men. The first account of heels is 10th century Persia. Now, these heels were very similar to stilettos today. They were only used by men. In the Persian army, though, there were soldiers on horseback. Those soldiers found that they could fire bows and arrows while standing up on a horse in their saddle a lot easier if they were wearing heels. The heel itself helped them balance and stay standing up so they could literally fire bows and arrows as they were going on a horse. It wasn't even until the 12th century that women were first documented wearing heels. Now, in the 1700s, it was mostly men who were wearing heels. It was a status symbol of nobility. Mostly kings and princes and other noblemen were the ones you would see with heels. It was King Louis XIV of France who actually really popularized heels with men, specifically noblemen. Royalty at the time were a lot like celebrities today. They inspired fashion. This meant that heels began to be used by high-class women and commoner men. It took a little bit longer, but common women began to also wear heels. Now, the noblemen didn't like this. One, they did not want to be associated with women at all, let alone common women. So this led to a difference in men's heels versus women's. Women's heels started to have a much thinner heel, which meant it was more uncomfortable and less steady to stand on and wear. The French Revolution did affect heels. You did not want to look like you were a noble person, so many commoners stopped wearing heels altogether. Not just in France, but also in Britain and America, people did not want to wear heels anymore. It began to be associated with witchcraft. And you definitely didn't want to be associated with witchcraft, or you were going to get burned at the stake. The Enlightenment period and Renaissance era actually led to heels being just for women primarily, because it was being taught that men were rational and women were irrational. So if you were wearing heels for just a fashion choice, it was considered irrational and only a thing for women. During the 1960s and 1970s, heels were becoming popular again for men. The Beatles, for instance, popularized the Chelsea boot, a type of heel that was primarily worn in Cuba, and men started wearing it all around. Today, men and women both wear heels, although it is primarily targeted for women. Now, history has shown us that will flip-flop back and forth every so often. So, maybe in 20 years, men will wear heels more. Who knows? Or it just depends on the type of heel. Just remembering, high heels were originally created for men and for riding horses in battle. So, quite an interesting history there. Fashion and society are always moving forward. So check out next week's episode where I will cover the history of belts.